Hey guys, welcome back to another video on politics. So we're gonna be discussing more on the Trump tariffs, or basically the tariffs that Trump has recently announced that would be hitting Canada, hitting Mexico, and hitting China. But apparently, some of these tariffs have actually been some of these tariff has actually gone down, and we're going to be discussing them today. More importantly, we're going to be discussing the plan that I think that Trump has with all these tariffs. But first, we're going to be talking about China because, as you all know, earlier today, Trump actually stopped his tariffs with Canada and Mexico. That's right. Trump put a 30-day pause on Mexico after Mexico promised to put 10,000 National Guard troops to guard the border to stop fentanyl and criminals basically just entering the country illegally, and he also stopped the tariffs on Canadian goods for 30 days after Canada pledged to with a $1.3 billion bill to secure the border and basically stop fentanyl trade into the United States. However, what we see is that the United States actually hasn't paused the tariffs on China, and this has caused China to hit back the U.S. goods, hit back with tariffs on the U.S. goods after the Trumps imposes the new tariffs. And basically, what we see is that on February the 10th, an additional 10% tariffs across all Chinese imports into the U.S. Came into effect after Trump was repeatedly warned Beijing it was not doing enough to halt the flow of illicit drugs into the United States. Within minutes, China's finance ministry said it would impose levies of 15% for U.S. coal, LNG, 10% on crude oil, farm equipment, a small number of trucks, as well as big engine shipped to China from the United States. Basically saying that if United States companies want to ship all these things to China, well, they're gonna need to pay 15% more money. All right. What we see is that China is basically retaliating, right? Because this is what happens in trade war. When someone tariffs your goods, you have to tariff their goods, and then you get together and discuss how you can, negotiate these tariffs. Now, I don't know how much these tariffs will affect America per se. While America does export a lot of coal and LNG, America's export realistically, America exports these things to anyone in the world. Everyone is willing to buy American oil, right? The Middle East, like Europe, is willing to buy the oil. India, like the Middle East, all these countries, they're willing to buy oil. They can just circumvent China completely and stuff like that. But more importantly, is we're seeing that unlike Canada or Mexico, which have backed down after Trump threatened to impose these tariffs, we see that China is in fact taking a more aggressive stance and is actually retaliating. Now, whether this might affect whether this might affect trade between America and China, of course it will. But I actually think that these, while we see that China right now is being extremely aggressive against America in regards to these tariffs, I actually do think that these tariffs will not actually come into effect, and that is purely because if we look at basically what Trump has done since office. And this is something that actually hit me when Mexico and Canada actually when Mexico and Canada negotiated with Trump to basically bring down the tariffs or to nullify the tariffs. And this is something that I honestly should have known for a long time. I don't know how it slipped up by me. I was really a bit. I was not thinking critically, but if you actually and this is something that I think we're gonna see a lot more during Trump's presidency is the talk on tariffs. Now, the left, like the many people like to talk about how these tariffs will destroy the economy, and basically they're gonna make inflation grow. The prices of and basically everyday goods in America will become more expensive, right? The eggs, they're already so expensive, now they're gonna become even more expensive, and Trump is just fueling the inflation. Well, and I think this is the main concern of Trump, is that Trump is not necessarily trying to actually implement the tariffs per se. And this is a very master plan, a genius plan, I think, orchestrated by Trump. If we look at what has happened since Trump has taken office, right? The first time that the the first time that Trump tried to tariff a country was Colombia. If we look here, tariff Colombia. Uh, what to know about tariffs on Colombia, right? So basically, what happened is after Trump basically announced the deportation of criminals, right? Trump announced that they will be going into sanctuary cities like Boston, they're going to New York, Chicago, right? All these big cities, and basically take out all of the criminals or people who have entered the country through the process of the process of um, seeking what was it? I forgot, seeking refuge or something. Basically, just crossing illegally. Yeah, right. The Trump promised to deport all of these criminals to their home country, and one country that didn't like this was Colombia. So Colombia basically said, we're not gonna accept these criminals. You can deal with the criminals themselves. We're not gonna accept these criminals back into the country. And what Trump did is Trump threatened to slap a 25% increase. 25% increase on all Colombian goods traveling into America. And what do we see after this threat on tariff? Right, Colombia immediately, let's see, yeah, Colombia immediately agreed to all of President Trump's terms, including the unrestricted acceptance of all illegal aliens from Colombia returned from the United States, including on U.S. military aircraft without limitation and delay. Right, and it's even said that I think the president of Colombia was actually willing to fly his personal jet to come and bring all these deported criminals back to Colombia. And because Colombia basically bent their back down and basically succumbed to America's might, Trump basically said that we're not gonna impose the tariff now. You don't get to get tariff, right? That's the first time we've seen America tariff, and basically what has happened is that the country has bent its back down and basically just given in to Trump's request and basically given in to America's request. Right, and the second time we see this is currently right now is with Mexico and Canada, where Mexico agreed to send 10,000 troops to protect the border to stop the flow of migrants from Mexico to United States and basically just protect the border, stop the flow of fentanyl into America, and also Canada has also promised to secure the border, stop the flow of fentanyl, right? And because of that, Trump basically the takes out all the tariffs on these countries. And why is that important is that now we see China. Now the United States has turned to tariff on China. And if we really believe what Donald Trump says is real, then the 10% on tariffs, 10% tariffs on China on goods such as titanium, such as oil and gas, this will be a huge, huge hit to China. And if China wants to really play this smart, they're probably going to they're probably going to give in to America's demands. And actually, this is a trend that we appear to have seen in Trump's brilliant plan in his tariffs. Is that when Trump goes and tariffs a country, yes, to the majority of people, it looks like Trump is trying to get money out of the country, basically get all the money from the tariffs and basically use that money to fund the tax cuts. But what we're seeing, and I think what, and I think this is Trump's actual plan for what he's trying to do with these tariffs, is that he's trying to get other countries to comply with America, because as you all know, America is the number one economy, is the basically the superpower, the most powerful country and the most rich country, right? If you lose, or if you get tariffed to hell by America, your country is not surviving. So what we're seeing, I think this is what Trump's strategy is, that by trying to threaten the tariff, the country that is about to get tariffed will give in to Trump's demands. In Colombia's case, it was receiving the illegal aliens. In Mexico's case, it was securing the border, and also in Canada's case, it's securing the border. Right, and this goes back all the way to the real reason why Trump, or basically the real focus of Trump, is to stop uh, fentanyl. If we look at this, where does fentanyl come from? The ingredients in fentanyl are produced by companies in China, right? This gives you a very good hint as to, why China is now being potentially tariffed, right? In China, it's used by pharmaceutical companies to make legal painkillers, but a portion of these chemicals is purchased by the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in Mexico. Cartels make the synthetic opioid in labs and then smuggle it into the United States, largely at official land crossings in California and Arizona. These small amounts of fentanyl in any shipment, the drug is 50 times more potent than heroin. The lack of odor making detection and seizures extremely challenging. So what we see here is that China is basically, fentanyl is made out of a base fentanyl. To synthesize fentanyl, you need a bunch of ingredients, and what we see here is that China is producing all of these producing all of these ingredients for fentanyl, and then Mexico, or the Mexican cartels, are shipping, or they're buying these ingredients. I'm just gonna call it fentanyl. So they're buying the ingredients to fentanyl. They're being shipped to Mexico, and then in Mexico they synthesize it. Because in China it's illegal to synthesize fentanyl, but in Mexico, like these cartels can do whatever they want, right? So these cartels synthesize fentanyl and they send it straight into America. So this is why we see that China is being blamed for basically the fentanyl epidemic in America. So I what we will see with this tariff war, and this is my prediction, is that what's going to happen in the near future is that I think uh, speaking with Trump has talked about speaking with China this week. I think, and I predict, is what will happen is that China will maybe make a concession in the area of fentanyl. So China might just, stop the shipment of ingredients of fentanyl from China to Mexico, or China might reduce the creation of these ingredients, or maybe pass a law to ban the use of these ingredients to be made into fentanyl. Right. Either way, we're gonna see that China will soon, sooner or later, make some concessions, and having made these concessions, Trump will likely terminate the tariff plan, or basically, Trump will likely stop the plan of 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. So what we're gonna see here is that these tariffs, these quote unquote declared tariffs, which would make which would theoretically make American goods more expensive, which would theoretically cause inflation, will actually never come into effect, because Trump's aim isn't to get money out of tariffs. Trump's aim is to fix the problems with its epidemic of fentanyl, and more more importantly, to get other countries to comply, right? So we'll likely see China like give some concessions to America and basically fold, right? And what I predict will happen after China, right, as you look at this Straits Time article, is that Trump suggested on February 2nd that the 27 nation European Union would be his next target, but he did not say when. So what we're probably gonna see happen is that Trump, uh, we don't know the percentage. Maybe it could be 10%, 15%, 25%. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Trump will probably impose a tariff plan on Europe, right? And U.S. By the way, the U.S. is basically the most important trading partner of the European Union, right? The tariffs would cover almost half of all U.S. imports and would require the U.S. to no doubt manufacture its own output. Blah blah blah. Basically saying that, yeah, the tariffs will cause inflation. But more importantly than that, if the United States were to tariff Europe, Europe would obviously not be able to accept these tariffs, so they're gonna have to concede. And so what we're gonna see, or what I predict will happen, is that Europe, after being threatened with the tariff plan, will concede, and most likely, I think the most likely outcome is that what will happen is that the European states will boost their spending in NATO. Right? This is a extremely controversial topic that Trump has constantly brought up, and is that Europe is not paying for the defense of Europe. They're not paying for the defense of their country. They're not paying to supply Ukraine, and they're not paying for their own military because everything is all subsidized by America, or America is doing all the heavy lifting. Right? We constantly hear about this 2% and that Trump always talks about. So what will happen is that, more likely or not, these European nations will promise to up their defense spending, right? Or to maybe buy more of America's goods. That could be another one to basically, yeah, to basically just reduce the trade deficit with America. And having done the concessions, we'll likely see that Trump cancels these tariff plans, and at the end of the day, America wins because America is the strongest and is basically right, is basically getting everyone to agree with America. And this is a common occurrence we're gonna be seeing, and this is just some of my insight, or what some of my takes on what I think is the genius plan of Trump's tariff plans, right? Obviously it's still hard to tell, but uh, I personally do not believe we're gonna see record high inflation in manufacturing. I personally think that Trump's tariff plan is a way of showing American strength in basically getting America's enemies to comply with America. Basically, just cementing the fact that Trump is considered a extremely far right, and basically a very strong leader, right? He's a very strong leader that gets others to do his stuff, right? This is the genius behind Trump's tariff plans, right? And with that being said, I think that's the end of the video. That's the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys know a bit more about what Trump's intentions behind the tariff plans are. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.